Kevin Durant seems like he will never be traded. So that is something that has kind of transpired here over the past month or so since he requested a trade, is kind of who is he going to go to, and especially as of late, when is he going to be traded? So in this video, I hope to answer kind of all those questions and whether KD's trade will ever happen or not. So if you enjoyed this video and you enjoy this channel, please like and subscribe. It means the world to me. I'm trying to hit 200 subscribers before the end of this week and 1,000 before the end of the year, and I cannot do that without your guys' help. So anything you guys do is greatly appreciated, but let's not waste any more of your time. Let's get right into this. Will Kevin Durant ever be traded? And although it's kind of obvious that it's going to happen at some point, the major question is kind of why has it not happened yet, and when is it likely to happen? And I hope to answer both those questions with you. But kind of let's go over what kind of transpired so far to this point, because it is very important to kind of take a look at that. Now, we're not going to take a deep dive into, oh, Kyrie Irving goes there and then he gets signed there, and James Harden and all these things. But as we kind of all know, KD kind of wants to get traded because he got sick of the whole Kyrie Irving situation where he's never playing because of the COVID circumstances. James Harden gets traded. KD kind of gets annoyed because the front office isn't doing what he wants, even though he's making a lot of the calls, yada, yada, yada. And then Kevin Durant requests his trade on June 30th from the Nets, listing a couple of his favorite options in the league to be traded to. And, you know, since the start of the process, many teams have kind of come and gone in the market, with these favorites of Kevin Durant being the Suns, the Heat, and the Warriors, and a couple other pieces here and there. But from the start, the Nets kind of clarified that they're not going to trade to where Kevin Durant wants to go. They're going to focus on getting the most in return, no matter where it is, whether that is a direct rival, whomever that is, whoever will get the most in return, that's likely where the Nets are going to trade them. Now, early on, the Suns, who Kevin Durant did want to go to, were some of the favorites for this trade to occur. Now, they were expected to sign and trade DeAndre Ayton to be used in this trade to get Kevin Durant in return, but as time passed and as time went on, the Suns ended up being forced to re-sign DeAndre Ayton because they had to match the Pacers' offer. And now, having re-signed Ayton and matching a contract, they now have to wait at least a year before they can even add DeAndre Ayton into a trade. So now, the Suns are really no longer in the market for Kevin Durant because DeAndre Ayton's not going to be involved. They're not going to want to trade Devin Booker nor Chris Paul, so now they really have no other options. Now, as mentioned, the Heat were also in top place that Kevin Durant wanted to play, and the Heat at one point were, in the market for it, but I don't think they were ever really a favorite because of what they had, and that's kind of why that trade never went through, is because they didn't really have enough to make the package work for the Nets. Now, although they had guys like Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero, it seemed like they didn't want to move on from Kyle Lowry, Jimmy Butler, or Bam Adebayo. They wanted to keep those three pieces, and they weren't really willing to put any of those guys in, and the amount of draft picks that they had wasn't enough for the Nets, so the Nets said no in the case of the Heat as well. So now you're out of Kevin Durant's top two locations, the Suns and the Heat, both being the number one seed, which, is kind of laughable, especially with the whole snake situation. A lot of people like to quote Kevin Durant as being. I don't know if I'd call him that, but I do find that kind of funny. So with the Suns and the Heat both being out, it was kind of questionable what was going to happen. And I think a big factor in the fact that those trades didn't occur was what the Nets thought they were going to get in return. Now, a huge factor in the trade not being completed was that ginormous Rudy Gobert trade that happened this year, in which the Timberwolves sent 5 first-round picks to the Jazz, and Walker Kessler, and Patrick Beverley, and a couple other players for just Rudy Gobert, which is a massive, massive trade. And then the Nets see that, along with some of these older trades that they looked at in regards to pieces like Paul George, which is traded for 5 first-round picks, or the trade like Anthony Davis to the Lakers, where you got Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart, and first-round picks. The Nets are looking at these 3 huge trades, just salivating because they know Kevin Durant is a bigger superstar than any 3 of these guys. So now they're sitting there wondering how much they can get, and I feel like it kind of, blew it a little bit too high. Now, most recently, the Celtics kind of stepped into the fold, and this happened just a couple days ago. And real quick, let's backpedal here. Although the Heat and the Suns were the favorites for Kevin Durant, like I said, the Nets were just going to trade to whomever had the best offer. So we do need to consider that in the first day, 15 teams reached out in regards to the Kevin Durant option, including teams like the Kings at one point I heard of, the Bulls, obviously the Suns and the Heat reached out, the Celtics, as we can see now, but there was some teams that were really high, right there in contention, could win it if they had Kevin Durant, and there were some teams that were really low that just wanted to take a risk and see how far Kevin Durant could take them. But like mentioned prior, although the Nets were willing to look at all offers, they just weren't getting enough. They weren't able to get what they felt like they deserved. So most recently, the Celtics ended up offering one of the biggest packages that has been rumored for this Kevin Durant trade, which included Jaylen Brown, an all-star. And yes, he was a one-time all-star, but last year you could argue he could have been a 2-time all-star, and a really big piece in the Celtics run. And Derek White, as well as a couple picks, and the Nets turn it down, which I think is blasphemy. Genuinely, I think that was an incredible trade for both teams in both directions. Now, if I'm being honest, I think this would be a stupid trade, position-wise for the Celtics, just because of the fact that they just made the finals with the roster they have. Why blow it up? But, I understand you want to bring Kevin Durant, and the Nets end up turning down and saying that they're only going to do the trade if they get picks, Jaylen Brown, some other pieces, and the reigning Defensive Player of the Year in Marcus Smart, which obviously I don't think the Celtics are going to be willing to do, to throw 2 of their starters, 1 an all-star, 1 the Defensive Player of the Year, and picks, as well as a couple other rotational pieces, pretty much blow up their entire depth just for Kevin Durant. I think that's outrageous, and I don't expect the Celtics to do that, and if they do, wow, that's going to be a crazy video that I may be having going out. But now the Nets are kind of stuck in this situation. And the big question now is kind of what's holding this trade back? And if we're being brutally honest, the only thing holding this trade back is the Nets. The Nets are the only thing that's holding this trade back. Now, it's simple. The Nets see Kevin Durant, who is one of the best players in the entire league. We got to be honest. He's one of the best players in the league, if not the best player in the league, alongside guys like Giannis Antetokounmpo and other players like that. And the Nets see Kevin Durant as this top guy who has 4 years left on his contract as the biggest trade package ever. They think this one player, Kevin Durant, will in return give them the biggest trade ever in the history of the NBA. Which, that's not too far out there. Now, the Nets saw this huge package that the Jazz got in return for Rudy Gobert. And, they expect way more for Kevin Durant because of that package. Rudy Gobert, who is a Defensive Player of the Year but doesn't have a ton of offense, got 5 first-round picks. So what does that say for Kevin Durant, who is one of the best scorers all time in the NBA? Couldn't he get more? And, if Gobert wasn't traded, I think this Kevin Durant situation would have already went by, been traded on the new team, and we'd be having conversations. We'd be seeing these jersey swaps to Kevin Durant, all this stuff. But because the Rudy Gobert trade happened and it was as big as it was, it kind of, made the market inflate. It inflated the market to dramatic proportions, way out of proportion, just because of this one trade, as well as some of these older trades that have occurred as time has went on. Now, the Nets, in return for Kevin Durant, right now, based on their word or, leaks, is the Nets are expecting a superstar in return for Kevin Durant. They want a superstar. They want a bevy of draft picks, and they want good role players, like starting caliber role players, all in return for Kevin Durant. And this would by far be the largest trade ever if this were to go through and they got that all in return. Now, I just don't see that happening. I could see you getting a superstar, and when they say superstar, they literally mean like top 20 player in the entire league, which is accurate. But I think they could get a all-star and these picks and the rest of it go down and be fine. But the fact that they want a superstar, a top 20 player, and picks and role players, I think is just too much. Just way too much. I mean, you're talking like they're looking at the Suns. They're probably going, I want Devin Booker as well as Bridges and all these firsts and a couple other pieces. Jay Crowder. That's just too much for the Suns or any team in that area to give up. Your number one guy, your entire future, and your depth. The Nets want all of that in return for Kevin Durant, which I just think it's too much. Now, with the minimal leverage that Kevin Durant does hold in this circumstance, and having 4 years left on his contract, being forced to play them, otherwise 4 years of his career down the drain, he's out of his prime at that point, Kevin Durant doesn't really have much. And Kevin Durant has expected this trade, to occur a lot faster than it probably has. Now, what I'm expecting, because of everything that's transpired so far, is I expect this trade market to really cool down. I think this Celtics spike in which they offer Jaylen Brown is going to be the last spike for a long while. I'm expecting the market to cool down dramatically and likely for the next couple of weeks to a month, just go completely cold. And maybe the Donovan Mitchell trade occurs during this time, but I don't expect Kevin Durant to be traded. And what I'm assuming, this is my guess, this is my best guess, and this is what I think is going to be accurate, is this Kevin Durant trade is not going to happen up until the start of training camp, right before the season starts. So we're talking the middle of September before this trade finally occurs. And right now we're right at the start of August, just about to hit it. So we're talking a whole month and a half before this trade finally occurs. 2 months and some change since, the start of this till the end of this is what I'm expecting, which is absolutely crazy to think about. But what do you guys think? What do you guys think about this? Should the Nets have accepted one of these prior trade suggestions? Do you think this is going to happen in the next week, or do you think the same as me, that's going to happen right before the regular season starts? What are all your thoughts on this matter? If you enjoyed this video, please give me a like, and if you enjoy this channel, why not subscribe? I'm having daily NFL, NBA, and NHL content, and I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and I can't do that without your guys' help. So please, any support you guys can give me is greatly appreciated. And as always, I hope it taught you something today. Hope it made you smile. Hope it made you laugh. That something's really important to me. Affects someone else's day in a great way, because every single day can be a great day if we all just put in the effort. And as always, you guys all be safe out there.
But something deep inside won't let me quit. I swear that